The queen fought like a creature possessed by rage and desperation. Her forearms moved faster than human eyes could follow. Her claws cut through the air where Hannah had been standing a second before. Black fluid poured from the wound in her chest, but she did not seem to feel pain. She was beyond pain now. She was beyond everything except the need to survive. Hannah rolled to the side as one of the queen claws slashed through the space where her head had been. The claw cut deep gouges in the living wall behind her. The building shuddered and screamed. Everything here was connected to the queen. When she hurt, the entire structure felt her pain. The rest of the team spread out around the chamber. They could not get clear shots at the queen because she moved too fast, but they could attack her defenders. Yuna threw explosive charges at the nightmare creatures that served as the queen's personal guard. Each explosion sent body parts flying. Across the chamber, Sergeant Day and his squad were still fighting at the front entrance. Their ammunition was running low, but they kept firing. Every shot had to count now. Every second they bought was a second that gave Hannah team a better chance to complete their mission. Minho found a position on a platform high above the battle. From there he could see the entire chamber. He watched the queen movements through his rifle scope. She was fast, but she had patterns. All living things had patterns. He just had to find hers. The queen leaped at Hannah with all four claws extended. Hannah ducked under the attack and fired her plasma rifle at point-blank range. The bolt burned through the queen's side and she screamed again. But she grabbed Hannah with two of her arms and lifted her off the ground. Jin rushed forward with a medical laser. The device was designed to perform surgery, but it could also be used as a weapon. He aimed it at the queen's eyes and fired. The laser beam burned across her face and she dropped Hannah to cover her wounded eyes. Hannah hit the ground hard but rolled to her feet. Her armor was cracked where the queen claws had tried to crush her, but she was still alive, still fighting. She raised her rifle for another shot. The queen was learning. That was what made the hive so dangerous. It adapted to every attack. She had already figured out how to dodge Hannah's plasma rifle. She moved in unpredictable patterns now. Side to side, up and down, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. But humans could learn too. That was what made them dangerous. Sung activated every jamming device he had. Electronic interference filled the chamber. The queen connection to the hive network began to weaken. She was being cut off from the collective consciousness that made her so powerful. Yuna saw her chance. While the queen was distracted by the electronic warfare, she placed her largest explosive charge directly under the queen throne. The throne was made of living bone and it was connected to the queen through nerve pathways. If she could destroy it, she might be able to disrupt the queen completely. The charge exploded with enough force to shake the entire building. The queen throne shattered into 1,000 pieces. The nerve connections were severed. For a moment, the queen stood alone without the support of the collective mind. In that moment, she was just another alien. Dangerous but not invincible. Minho saw his opportunity. The queen had stopped moving for just a second. It was enough. He fired his rifle. The bullet traveled across the chamber faster than sound. It hit the queen in the center of her forehead and exploded inside her skull. The queen fell backward. Black fluid poured from her wounds, but she was not dead yet. She was trying to reconnect to the hive network, trying to call for help from the collective consciousness. Hannah would not let that happen. She walked up to the wounded queen and looked down at her. The alien creature that had destroyed 17 civilizations was dying. But she was still dangerous. "You cannot stop us," the queen whispered. "We are everywhere. We are eternal. Even if you kill me, others will take my place." "Maybe," Hannah said, "but they will have to do it without you." She pressed her plasma rifle against the queen's head and pulled the trigger. The queen died instantly. Her body went limp. The black fluid stopped flowing. The collective consciousness lost its central node. Across the chamber, the queen defenders collapsed. Without her mind to guide them, they were just empty shells. Throughout the building, the living walls began to wither. The pulse of life that had filled the structure grew weak and then stopped. Outside the building, Day and his squad felt the change immediately. The hive creatures they were fighting suddenly became confused. They stopped moving with coordination. They began to fight each other instead of the humans. Day keyed his radio. "Captain, what is your status? Mission accomplished," Hannah replied. "The queen is dead. Get to the extraction point now." The team moved quickly through the dying building. The corridors that had been filled with life were now just empty tunnels. The lights were going out one by one. The hive was collapsing without its central intelligence. They reached the surface to find chaos. Hive creatures were attacking each other. Living ships were crashing into the ground. The organic structures that had covered the planet were beginning to dissolve. Their extraction ship was waiting for them. Ray had kept the engines running and the weapons ready. The team climbed aboard and lifted off just as the building behind them collapsed into rubble. From orbit, they watched the planet die. The living tissue that had covered the surface was rotting away. The connections between worlds were breaking apart. 17 star systems were being freed from the hive. Collective consciousness. It would take years for the planets to recover, decades before they could support life again. But they would recover. The hive was gone and it would not be coming back. Hannah sat in the ship medical bay while Jin treated her wounds. Her armor was cracked and her body was covered in bruises, but she was alive. Her entire team was alive. They had done what no other species in the galaxy had been able to do. The communication system crackled to life. It was Ambassador Keon calling from the space station. Captain Hannah, this is Ambassador Keon. Please respond. This is Captain Hannah. Mission successful. The Hive Queen is dead. The collective has collapsed. Outstanding work, Captain. The entire galaxy owes you a debt that can never be repaid. Just doing our job, Ambassador Hannah replied. Just doing our job. The ship turned toward home. Behind them, the Hive worlds continued to collapse. The nightmare was over. The galaxy was safe, and everyone would remember that when civilized solutions failed, humanity had provided the answer. They had asked for help, so humanity had sent its deadliest, and those deadly humans had saved them all. The stealth ship Silent Thunder moved through space like a ghost. Its hull was painted black and covered with materials that absorbed radar and heat signatures. Inside the ship, 12 humans sat in their drop pods checking their weapons one last time. Each pod was designed to punch through a planet atmosphere and land without being detected. Captain Hannah looked at her tactical display. The target planet grew larger on the screen. What had once been a beautiful world with blue oceans and green continents was now a nightmare of living tissue. The entire surface pulsed like a giant heart. Veins of glowing liquid ran across the landscape like rivers of poison. The planet used to be called New Eden. 2 billion people had lived there in great cities that touched the clouds. Now those cities were gone. In their place stood towers of bone and flesh that reached toward the sky like twisted fingers. The Hive had eaten everything and made it part of itself. Hannah activated the team communication system. Listen up, everyone, she said. We drop in 30 minutes. Remember the plan. We land scattered across the northern continent. We move to the rally point using stealth protocols. No shooting unless absolutely necessary. We need to stay invisible until we reach the primary target. The primary target was deep underground. Intelligence suggested the Hive Queen was located in what used to be the planet capital city. She would be surrounded by her most powerful defenders and protected by layers of living armor. Getting to her would require them to travel through 15 kilometers of hostile territory. Sergeant Day checked his heavy assault rifle. The weapon was loaded with special ammunition designed to punch through biological armor. Each bullet contained a small explosive charge that would detonate inside the target. He also carried a plasma cutter that could slice through steel. If the Hive wanted to fight up close, he was ready. Lieutenant Yuna examined her demolition equipment. She had enough explosives to level a city block. But more importantly, she had bioweapons. Chemicals that would poison the Hive organic structures. Viruses that would make their living ships sick. Firebombs that would burn hot enough to turn flesh into ash. Corporal Minho cleaned his sniper rifle. The weapon could fire through 2 meters of solid steel. He had special rounds that would track their targets using heat signatures. He also had rounds that would explode after penetrating armor. The Hive would learn to fear his shots. The other team members prepared their own equipment. Jin, the medic, loaded his medical kit with antidotes for Hive toxins. Sung, the communications expert, activated his jamming devices. Ray, the pilot, ran final checks on their escape vehicle. 30 minutes later, the drop pods launched from the Silent Thunder. They fell toward the planet like meteors. Each pod was wrapped in heat shielding and stealth coating. To the Hive sensors, they would look like space debris or small asteroids. The pods hit the atmosphere and began to glow with friction heat. Inside each pod, a human warrior prepared for the fight of their life. They had trained for this mission for months. They had studied every detail of Hive biology. They knew their enemy better than the enemy knew itself. The first pod hit the ground, in what used to be a forest. Now it was a maze of giant mushrooms that pulsed with bioluminescent light. The pod door opened and Hannah stepped out. She wore full combat armor painted to match the organic colors around her. Her helmet displayed tactical information directly onto her visor. The air was thick with spores that tried to enter her lungs, but her armor was sealed tight. The Hive could not convert what it could not touch. She activated her locator beacon and began moving toward the rally point. Around her, the landscape was alive. Trees that looked like they were made of muscle and bone swayed in the wind. Flowers that had too many teeth tried to bite anything that moved. Vines covered in eyes watched her pass. This was what the Hive did to worlds. It turned them into extensions of its own body. One by one, the other team members checked in. Day had landed in what used to be a city. Now it was a maze of living buildings that breathed and moved. Yuna had come down near the coast, where the ocean had turned into a thick soup of organic matter. Minho was in the mountains, where the peaks had been replaced by massive bone structures. Each team member began moving toward the rally point. They used every trick they had learned in decades of warfare. They moved like shadows. They thought like predators. They became part of the nightmare landscape around them. The Hive defenders began to appear as they moved deeper into the planet. Creatures that had once been human but were now something else entirely. Their bodies were covered in armor, grown from their own bones. They had too many arms and too many eyes. They moved in perfect coordination like parts of a single organism. But the humans were ready. When a group of defenders surrounded Day, he did not try to run. He stood his ground and opened fire. His assault rifle tore through their armor like paper. His plasma cutter sliced through their weapons. In 30 seconds, 6 defenders were dead, and Day was moving again. Yuna encountered a living wall that tried to trap her. She planted a small explosive charge and stepped back. The wall exploded in a shower of flesh and bone, but more walls began growing to replace it. So she planted more charges. The hive could adapt, but it could not adapt faster than she could destroy. Minho found himself being hunted by flying creatures that looked like giant bats made of meat. He set up his rifle on a hill and began picking them off one by one. Each shot was perfect. Each target fell from the sky. The other creatures learned to fear the sound of his gun. Hour by hour, the team moved closer to their target. The hive threw everything it had at them. Poison gas that tried to eat through their armor. Acid rain that fell from the sky. Creatures that exploded when they got close. But the humans kept coming. They were not just soldiers. They were evolution perfect killers. And they were coming for the queen. The team gathered at the entrance to what had once been the planetary capital building. Now it was a massive organic structure that looked like it had been grown instead of built. The walls were made of living tissue that pulsed with a slow heartbeat. Veins of glowing fluid ran through the structure like blood vessels. The entire building was alive and aware. Captain Hannah looked at her team. They had lost no one during the approach, but everyone was tired. Fighting through 15 kilometers of hostile territory had pushed them to their limits. Their armor was damaged from acid attacks. Their weapons were running low on ammunition. But they had made it this far. The entrance to the building was guarded by creatures that defied description. They had once been the Planetary Defense Force, but the hive had changed them into something else. They stood 3 meters tall with 4 arms and skin like metal. Their eyes glowed with the same light as the hive structures. They moved with perfect coordination because they shared the same mind. Day studied the guards through his scope. "How many do you count, Captain?" "Well, visible guards," Hannah replied. "Probably twice that many hidden. Standard hive tactics. They want us to think we can fight our way through, so what do we do?" asked Yuna. "We give them what they expect," Hannah said. "Then we do something unexpected. Day, you and your squad take the front entrance. Make a lot of noise. Draw their attention. The rest of us will find another way in." Day grinned. His squad consisted of 4 soldiers armed with heavy weapons. They could make plenty of noise. He moved his team into position and waited for the signal. Meanwhile, Hannah led the remaining 7 soldiers around the side of the building. Minho used his rifle scope to scan the walls, looking for weak points. "There, Hannah," he said, pointing to a section of wall that looked thinner than the rest. "That area shows less heat signature. Probably a ventilation system." Yuna placed a small charge against the wall. The explosion was quiet but effective. A hole opened in the living tissue and black fluid poured out. The building shuddered like it was in pain, but the hole was big enough for them to enter. At that moment, Day opened fire on the front guards. His heavy weapons lit up the night with muzzle flashes. Explosions echoed across the landscape as his squad used rocket launchers and plasma cannons. The hive guards rushed to respond to the attack. Hannah led her team through the hole in the wall. Inside the building was like being inside a giant body. The floors were soft and warm. The walls pulsed with life. Strange lights flickered in the organic material. Everything was alive and everything was watching them. They moved deeper into the structure, following corridors that looked like arteries. The air was thick with spores that tried to get into their armor. Strange sounds echoed through the passages, whispers in languages that had never been spoken by human throats. Behind them, they could hear the battle at the front entrance. Day Squad was doing their job, drawing the defenders away from the real target, but Hannah knew they could not keep it up forever. Sooner or later, the hive would realize it was being tricked. The corridors led them deeper underground. They passed chambers full of things that had once been people. Now they were part of the hive network, connected by cables and tubes. Their eyes were open, but they were not really alive anymore. They were just parts of a larger organism. Jin, the medic, looked at the converted people with disgust. "Can we save them?" he asked. "No," Hannah replied. "They are gone. The best thing we can do for them is end this." They reached the central chamber after an hour of careful movement. The room was massive. The ceiling stretched up into darkness. The walls were covered in a network of veins and nerves that pulsed with information. And in the center of it all was the Queen Dot. She was beautiful in a horrible way, 3 meters tall, with skin like polished ivory, 4 arms that ended in claws sharp enough to cut steel. Her face was almost human, but her eyes were black pools that reflected no light. She sat on a throne made of living bone, surrounded by defenders that looked like they had been carved from nightmares. The queen looked at them as they entered. Her voice filled the chamber without her moving her lips. It came from the walls themselves. "Welcome, humans," she said. "I have been waiting for you." Hannah stepped forward with her weapon ready. "You know what we are here for." The queen smiled. It was not a pleasant expression. "Yes, you are here to kill me, but you do not understand what I am. I am not just one creature. I am the collective consciousness of 17 civilizations. I am the combined knowledge of billions of minds. You cannot kill an idea." "We can try," Hannah replied. The queen gestured and her defenders moved to attack. But these were not like the creatures they had fought outside. These were her personal guard, created specifically to protect her. They moved faster than anything had a right to move. Their claws could cut through armor like cloth. Their strength could crush steel. The battle that followed was unlike anything in human military history. Yuna threw explosive charges that the defenders caught and threw back. Minho fired shots that seemed impossible, but his targets dodged them. Jin tried to treat wounded team members while dodging attacks from creatures that could tear him apart. But the humans had one advantage the hive could not understand. They did not think as one mind. Each soldier made their own decisions. Each one attacked from unexpected angles. Each one fought like their life depended on it because it did. Song, the communications expert, used his electronic warfare skills to disrupt the queen. Connection to her network. For a few seconds, she was cut off from the collective consciousness. In that moment, she was vulnerable. Hannah saw her chance and took it. She charged forward with her plasma rifle firing. The queen tried to defend herself, but she was used to fighting as part of a group mind. Alone, she was just another target. The plasma bolt hit the queen in the center of her chest. She screamed, and the sound came from every wall in the chamber. Black fluid poured from her wound, but she was not dead yet. She was too strong to die from one shot. The final battle between human and alien queen began. It would determine the fate of the galaxy. The space station floated in the darkness between stars like a metal island in an ocean of black. Inside the station, Ambassador Keon sat in his chair looking at the emergency message that had just arrived. The message was not good news. It was the kind of news that made his stomach feel heavy and his hands shake a little. Keon had been the human representative to the Galactic Council for 15 years. He had seen many bad things in that time. Wars between planets, diseases that killed millions, pirates who stole from peaceful traders. But this message was different. This message was about something that could end everything. The message came from the Outer Rim worlds. These were planets far away from the center of the galaxy where most of the civilized species lived. The Outer Rim was where people went to start new lives or to hide from their past. It was not a safe place, but it was free. Now even that freedom was gone. Chancellor Vex sat in his office on the planet Corellia. His blue skin was pale with fear and his forearms shook as he recorded the message. Behind him through the window, Keon could see smoke rising from the city. Buildings were broken and burning. Ships flew overhead, but they were not the right shape. They looked like they were grown instead of built. Vex began to speak, and his voice was full of terror. The words came out fast, like he was afraid he would not have time to finish. He told Keon about the enemy that had come to their worlds. An enemy unlike anything they had ever seen before. The enemy called itself the Hive. It was not one creature, but many creatures working together like a giant brain made of living things. When the Hive came to a planet, it did not just conquer it, it changed it. It took every living thing and made it part of itself. Plants, animals, people, everything became part of the Hive. Vex told Keon how it started. 3 months ago, a strange ship had arrived at the edge of their system. The ship looked like it was made of bone and meat instead of metal. When they tried to talk to it, the ship did not answer. Instead, it began to change. It grew bigger and bigger until it was the size of a small moon. Then the ship began to make more ships. But these were not built in factories. They were grown like plants or animals. Each new ship was alive, and it thought with the same mind as all the other ships. The Hive mind. The first planet to fall was Nexus Prime. It had 2 billion people living on it. The Hive ship surrounded the planet and began to drop things onto the surface. The things looked like seeds, but they were not seeds. They were living creatures that began to grow as soon as they touched the ground. The creatures spread across the planet like a disease. They ate everything in their path. Trees, grass, animals, people, everything, but they did not just eat. They changed what they ate. A tree would become part of a living wall. An animal would become a living weapon. A person would become a walking part of the Hive mind. The Planetary Defense Force tried to fight back. They had good ships and brave soldiers, but every time they destroyed one of the Hive creatures, 2 more would grow in its place. The Hive learned from each battle. It adapted and changed. What worked once would not work again in just 2 weeks. Nexus Prime was gone. The planet was still there, but it was not the same planet. It was covered in a thick layer of living tissue that pulsed like a heartbeat. The cities were gone. The forests were gone. The people were gone. Everything was part of the Hive now. Then the Hive moved to the next planet, and the next, and the next. Each world that fell made the Hive stronger. Each world gave it more resources to grow and change and adapt. The Outer Rim worlds tried to work together to stop it, but they were too different. They could not agree on anything fast enough. Some worlds tried to run away. They loaded their people onto ships and flew to other systems, but the Hive followed them. It was patient. It could wait. It would chase them across the galaxy if it had to. Other worlds tried to fight. They gathered their fleets and flew out to meet the Hive in space. The battles were terrible. Ships exploded in bright flashes of light. Brave soldiers died trying to save their homes, but the Hive kept coming. It never got tired. It never gave up. It never stopped learning. Now 17 worlds were gone. 17 worlds that had been home to billions of people. All of them were part of the Hive now. All of them were lost forever. Vex finished his message with a plea. He begged the Galactic Council to help them. He said they needed warriors who could fight without fear. They needed killers who could end the hive once and for all. They needed someone who could do what civilized people could not do. Kian knew what Vex was really asking for. He was asking for humans. Most of the species in the galaxy had evolved past their violent nature. They had learned to solve problems with words instead of weapons. They had built a peaceful civilization among the stars. But humans were different. Humans had brought their capacity for violence with them when they left Earth. The other species feared humans. They respected them, but they also feared them. Humans could be kind and gentle. They could create beautiful art and music. They could love deeply and care for others. But they could also be monsters when they needed to be. Sat in his chair and thought about what to do. He could tell the Council that this was not their problem. The Outer Rim worlds were not members of the Galactic Council. They had chosen to live outside the protection of civilized space. They had made their choice, but Kian knew that would not stop the hive. Once it finished eating the Outer Rim, it would come for the Council worlds. It would come for everyone. And when it did, it would be too strong to stop. Kian reached for his communication device. He entered a special code that only he knew. A code that would reach Earth Command directly. A code that would bring the most dangerous humans in the galaxy to fight the most dangerous enemy anyone had ever seen. The message went out into space at the speed of light. Soon the hive would learn what it meant to face humanity at war. Captain Hannah stood in the briefing room of the Earth Command Station on Lunar Base. Around her sat 11 other people. These were not ordinary soldiers. These were the best killers humanity had ever produced. Each one had been chosen from millions of candidates. Each one had proven they could do what others could not do. The room was quiet except for the soft hum of the air recyclers. Everyone knew why they were here. The call had gone out across all human military branches. Special Forces, Marine Raiders, Navy SEALs, Army Rangers, cyber warfare specialists. The message was simple. The galaxy needed its monsters. Hannah looked at each face around the table. She had worked with most of them before. She knew their skills. She knew their limits. More importantly, she knew they would follow her into hell if she asked them to. Sergeant Day sat to her right. He was built like a mountain with arms that could crush steel. His face was covered in scars from 100 battles. He had been a wrestler before joining the military. Then he learned that breaking enemy soldiers was more profitable than breaking opponents in a ring. He smiled when he fought. It was not a nice smile. Lieutenant Yuna sat across from him. She was small and quiet, but her eyes were like winter ice. She could make bombs from kitchen supplies. She could turn a children's toy into a weapon. She had once destroyed an entire enemy base using nothing but fertilizer and old electronics. When she worked, everything around her became dangerous. Corporal Minho was the team sniper. He could put a bullet through a coin from 2 kilometers away. He could shoot in any weather, any conditions, any situation. He had once killed an enemy commander through a window while hanging upside down from a helicopter. The other soldiers called him the Ghost because his targets never saw him coming. There were others too. Jin the medic, who could keep someone alive, even after they should be dead. Sung the communications expert, who could hack any system ever built. Ray the pilot, who could fly anything with wings or engines. Each person in the room was the best at what they did. What they did was kill people. Hannah activated the holographic display in the center of the table. The image that appeared made everyone lean forward. It showed a star system, but it was not like any star system they had ever seen. The planets were connected by thick organic cables that pulsed with sickly light. Ships that looked like they were grown instead of built moved between the worlds. This is what remains of the Corellia system, Hannah said. 3 months ago it was home to 15 billion people. Now it is home to the hive. Everything you see there was once something else. The cables used to be space stations. The ships used to be people. The hive takes everything and makes it part of itself. She touched a control and the image zoomed in on one of the planets. The surface was covered in a thick layer of flesh that looked like skin. Buildings grew out of the organic matter like tumors. Things that might have once been trees now looked like giant veins pumping fluid across the landscape. The hive is not like any enemy we have faced before, Hannah continued. It is a collective intelligence. Every part of it shares the same mind. When one part learns something, all parts learn it. When one part is threatened, all parts respond. It adapts to any attack. Within hours, sometimes minutes. Day raised his hand. How do we kill something like that, Captain? Good question, Hannah replied. Traditional warfare does not work. The Outer Rim worlds tried everything. Nuclear weapons, biological agents, chemical attacks, energy weapons. Nothing worked for long. The hive adapted to each attack and became immune. Then, how are we supposed to win? Asked Yuna. Because we are not going to fight it like the others did, Hannah said. We are going to fight it like humans. We are going to be unpredictable. We are going to be creative. We are going to be more brutal than it expects. The hive has never faced humans before. It does not know what we are capable of. She changed the display to show technical readouts. Our intelligence suggests the hive operates through a central control node. Think of it like a queen bee. If we can locate and destroy the queen, the rest of the hive should collapse. The problem is getting to her. The queen will be in the most protected location possible, Jin said. Probably at the center of the strongest world, surrounded by every defense the hive can create. Exactly, Hannah nodded, which is why we are not going in the front door. We are going to use the one advantage we have. The hive thinks like a collective. It makes logical decisions based on the best interests of the whole. But humans are individuals. We can make decisions that seem crazy or stupid but actually work. She pulled up the mission plan. We insert onto the outer planet here. We move through the hive structure like we are part of it. We use their own biology against them. We think like predators, not like an army. Minho studied the plan. What about extraction? Captain Hannah looked at each of them in turn. Extraction is secondary to mission completion. The hive cannot be allowed to spread further. If it reaches the core worlds, billions more will die. Our job is to stop it here, no matter what it costs. The room was quiet for a moment. Everyone understood what she was saying. This was a suicide mission. They were being asked to save the galaxy by dying for it. But that was what they had trained for. That was what they had always known they might have to do. Day was the first to speak. When do we leave, Captain? 72 hours, Hannah replied. That gives us time to prepare our equipment and study the target. I want everyone to memorize every detail of the hive structure. Know it better than your own home. When we get there, we will only have one chance. The meeting broke up and the soldiers went to prepare. Each one knew they might be seeing their teammates for the last time, but they also knew they were humanity's best hope. They were the monsters that civilized people called when civilization was not enough. In 72 hours, they would go to war against an enemy that had never known defeat. They would fight creatures that shared a single mind with weapons that were alive. They would walk into the heart of a nightmare that had consumed 17 worlds. They could not wait to get started.